And to talk more on this, we cross live to our correspondent, Greg Navarro. He's joining us live from Sydney. Greg, it's great to have you with us. So tell us what Australia is doing in response to the high crime rates among Aboriginals. Have the measures yielded any results?
Well, I've got to go back to that statistic you just gave where you said they account for about 25% the Indigenous population incarcerated or in prison. What's even more startling about that is Indigenous Australians make up about 3% of the entire population here. There are many programs trying to reduce those crime rates, including one here in Sydney. And that's pretty unique. It's called the Clean Slate Without Prejudice program. It started about 7 years ago with one simple goal in mind. That was to help reduce crime in the Sydney suburb of Redfern, which had one of the highest rates of crime in the entire state. Organizers say they quickly learned that the program, which puts Indigenous youths and police officers together, can accomplish so much more. Travis Close is a fighter. Not because of his hand speed or footwork, but what the 21-year-old Aboriginal Australian has battled to overcome.
When I first went to jail, it's not a good place to be, it's just ugly. No one wants to be in jail.
That's where Travis found himself after a series of wrong choices as a teenager, destined for a life of crime.
Everyone is new when we welcome you, always welcome back.
But an invitation to this unusual program helped Travis develop the skills he needed to fight his way out of a life with no future.
I've got 2 kids to look after now, I've got the missus, got my own house, finally. So yeah, I'm loving the future now, I'm loving it.
We've got a relationship we build.
In 2009, Shane Phillips co-founded the Clean Slate Without Prejudice program in the Sydney suburb of Redfern. At the time, crime here was high, and respect between the police and Aboriginal community was low.
We had a real resentment, and myself including, towards the police. We just thought that we were polar opposites and there was no way we were going to work together.
So at-risk Aboriginal kids and police officers were brought together to help smash the stereotypes, and the results have been dramatic.
From over 100 robberies a month to less than 5.
Australia continues to struggle with the issue of racism. That struggle was highlighted last year with the constant booing of Indigenous athlete Adam Goodes after celebrating a goal with a tribal dance.
So the war cry from Adam here.
And a recently released speech on racism by Indigenous journalist Stan Grant quickly went viral.
We are fewer than 3% of the Australian population, and yet we are 25%, a quarter of those Australians, locked up in our prisons. And if you are a juvenile, it is worse, it is 50%. An Indigenous child is more likely to be locked up in prison than they are to finish high school.
Those are the odds many of these kids face, making these early morning training sessions even more important. The program doesn't just end at the gates. After training, some of the younger kids are actually driven to school to make sure they'll turn up.
There's constant contact with the schools, with juvenile justice, with the police. People are staying out of jail.
Your thoughts create your actions create your habits, and your habits create your life.
And they are learning the path they were on.
Oh, probably in jail. Yeah, probably locked up. My mate.
You answered that pretty quickly. You're sure of that? You're convinced?
Yeah, I'm 100% sure.
Doesn't have to be their future.
We always repetitively say it, take the mediocre benchmark away, aim for the stars, focus on the process of turning up every day.
Giving people like Travis Close a fighting chance at the kind of future they didn't think was possible. There are a lot of successful parts of that program, but the one very simple thing that helped to cut down crime, that contributed the most, was one of the most basic, a 6 a.m. start 3 times a week, meaning a lot of those at-risk kids had to get up at about 5 o'clock in the morning, meaning they could not stay up late when a lot of the crime in Redfern took place. Mang Mang?
Well, that certainly looks like a very inspiring mentoring program. Now, Greg, what else is being done to help bridge this disproportionate gaps facing Australia's Indigenous population? And I mean, as we mentioned, each Aboriginal group is unique in their own way. So what about preserving their traditions?
Well, we'll start with the first part of that. One of the big things that Indigenous leaders have been pushing for some time is constitutional recognition, meaning at the moment Aboriginals are not recognized by Australia's constitution, and that's really important when it comes to things like discrimination. Now, there were some meetings with the former Prime Minister last year and a pledge to push on with that, but so far nothing has happened. Now, there are other programs as well, but a lot of the Indigenous leaders that we've talked to say not enough is being done. As far as those traditions, Another concern is many of those, as you would find in many cultures, are being lost on the younger generation. They're not focusing as much on that as they are on what's taking place. And that really underscores a problem that faces a lot of countries when it's trying to preserve its indigenous population, the struggle between trying to change the present without forgetting about the past.
Well, our Greg Navarro reporting from Sydney, thank you so much for bringing us that.